This video before, I really don't know the history of it, but paramedics, EMS really started here in South Florida, here in Miami. And to have, I feel very humbled to have the two individuals that started our career, the ones that we're in, here present today. So if I can bring up Dr. Nagel and Dr. Hirschman at this time.
Thank you very much. Is this working? Yeah. It is. I'm the electronic communicator, so I check out the equipment. It'll be ready for you in a moment. We were younger and probably better looking at.
The chief at the Jackson Memorial Hospital, when Jim and I were starting out, was a guy named Bill Nordwall. And he allowed the fire department to come into Jackson Hospital and put their lines, their telephone lines, through the hospital so that the firemen could talk to the doctors in the hospital over that special line. And we had nurses and we had doctors who were not particularly enthusiastic about what we were doing. They felt we were infringing on their turf. But they weren't willing to go out and take care of these people in the street, and the firemen were. So I'm going to end up my remarks with, I want to give two accolades to something that happened in those years that I felt were critically important to the development of emergency medicine as you all know it. And one in 1973 was a grant by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for emergency communications, what you call 911. And we had $15 million to spend, and we got 200 applications, and we threw 100 of them out. And we site visited 100. And we gave grants to 44 places around the country to start 911. And if any of you have ever tried to grow grants in your yard, grow grass in your yard, you know what a pinch graft is. Little plots of grass and you hope it spreads. Well, those 44 grants brought 911 to this country. And the other accolade that I would offer is a TV program called Emergency. Do you remember? Well, you all don't remember, you're too young. But Gage and DeSoto, Randy Mantooth and Kevin Ty were those two paramedics. Dr. Brackett was in Rampart Hospital. And that program was very popular, and people all over the country said, why can't we have emergency medicine? And so I take my hat off to that TV program.
Give you one.
Well, we're going to open up the questions and answers because I'm sure you have a lot of questions.
I'd like to show these slides.
Sure, if you haven't, we'll get it up for you. There's not any bad pictures in here, right?
No, that's not bad.
Okay, just making sure.
And help her pick the right one.
Oh. In the meantime, if anybody has any questions for Dr. Nagel, here he is.
You're the moderator. No. No hands. I have a question. There's the chief.
Dr. Nagel, when you and Dr. Hirschman got started, did you ever in your wildest imagination envision that what you started will become what it is now?
Chief, we lived one day at a time. We would take a step and we didn't fall on our face and so forth. However, the chief before you, Larry Kenny, I was at Jackson Hospital. I thought things were going well. We had 3 rescues. And 9 o'clock in the morning, and Chief Kenny calls me on the telephone, and he said, "Did you read this morning's paper?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, I want you to read what Bill Roberts said this morning." And Bill Roberts always had a column on the left side of the local part. And Bill Roberts said that Miami Fire Rescue came into this man's house, took the patient who was dead to Jackson Hospital, and they lost his wallet, and they did this and that, and it was terrible. I read that article. So I called the officer, I'm not going to name him. I called the lieutenant who was on duty, and he said, "Doc," he said, "we put the paddles on the patient. He was in ventricular fibrillation. We shocked him. He came back to a sinus rhythm." And an old physician, my age, came in and said, "Well, he's dead." And we said, "No, sir, look at the electrocardiogram." And this old physician insisted. And so we took him to the hospital, and we resuscitated successfully from VFib about 15%. And he didn't make it. And so I called up the newspaper, and we got the Bill Roberts, a big burly guy. I always weighed 150 pounds. People that are your size or 200, they scare me. And he came, and I said, "Let me show you what we did." And I showed him how we do resuscitation and look at the electrocardiogram and so forth. And he wrote a column the next day, and he said, "These are the facts. And if I have a heart attack in Miami, I hope Miami Fire Rescue takes care of me." And I thought, God bless him. So that was the worst moment of my career with Chief Kenny.
This is to remind you that the first rescue equipment you could not stand up in it and you could not transport in it. We improved on that. There's Dr. Nagel. Dr. Nagel set up a video camera in the emergency room at Jackson to make sure that the Jackson staff did the right things with patients when we brought them in. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. And they thought when he spoke on a loudspeaker to them, it was the voice of God. Do you want to comment on this, Gene?
Keep going.
What do you do with policemen on the scene? Give them something to do. Keeps them out of trouble. This was our numbers keeper, a good friend, trusted co-worker, Sidney Nussenfeld. Do you want to comment about him, Gene? And then some of our survivors. We were quite pleased with having survivors, of course. And Dr. Nagel got their pictures. Here's one, here's another, here's another, here's another. And
Go back a couple of.
okay, by the way, this is half a century ago. I guess it would not be a HIPAA violation.
Hold it. This is what do you call it in Florida when you come down for the winter?
Snowbird.
Rochester, New York. And a successful defibrillation. And a year later, when he came down here, he fibrillated again. So he's the only double defibrillation that I know of.
And then I thought you'd like to see some of the rescue vehicles from half a century ago. This is Jacksonville. Yours truly on the right. This is Seattle, Washington. This is Los Angeles, and notice, no ability to transport. This is one that Dr. Nagel was telling you about, Rescue 51 or whatever it was, is actually 28 out there. I rode with them one day, and we had a heart attack patient. Turned out that when the ambulance was called to do the transport, the patient didn't have the right insurance for that ambulance, so we had to wait with the heart attack patient till they figured out how to get the right ambulance. Fortunately, most of the country has cut that red tape by now. What does that say? Dallas. And Hialeah, with my first sister-in-law standing by it. Tampa. And the golf cart story. Gene, you want to tell them about the first golf cart? If not, I will say that our city of Miami rescue paramedics, when they were assigned to the Orange Bowl, were practically having heart attacks themselves if they had to climb to a heart attack patient up in the upper part of the stands. Fortunately, we were able to talk the Miami Dolphins along with the Heart Association, but primarily the Dolphins' money to pay for these golf carts and they were propane powered, as I recall, to get our paramedics up to the upper part of the stands in the Orange Bowl. More comments, Chief?
Well, the $100,000 to start this program in the Orange Bowl was Joe Robbie's, the owner of the Dolphins, Joe Robbie's money. And we had 2 carts in the stands at the Orange Bowl. And I wish I could remember the safety with the Dallas Cowboys, but I can't remember the guy's name. Randy something. Anyway, his father was in the stand in Miami, and he fibrillated. And one of these carts saved him. And he said, "What can I do for the fire rescue, for saving my dad?" I said, "You can make a commercial." And he said, "I'd be glad to." So we had the 3 firemen and the cart. Well, first of all, they showed a vicious tackle by a football player. And then the camera switched to the 3 paramedics in the cart. And the football player said, and he came on the scene and he said, "And these 3 paramedics saved my father." And the father comes walking in. And he said, "And I'll always be grateful to the City of Miami Fire Rescue." And radio or TV stations have to show a certain amount of free commercial type program. And that thing got shown time and time again all over the state. It was really a blessing for fire rescue.
But this last slide is to remind you, after an intense day at work or an intense day like today of competition, do take a couple of days off and relax and try not to take life too seriously in order to avoid burnout. Thank you very much. Get the lights? How'd I do? Right. You did pretty good.
Academy Award.
Thank you.
So as you guys can see, we're blessed to have history right here. These doctors were pioneers, and a lot of what's done in this country today was started right here with these 2 men. You know, throughout the years, EMS progressed from load and go and simple treatment to the invasive and highly technical treatments that we do today. It's a great day, and we share this day with these special men because they pioneered a lot of revolutionary ideas and highly effective life-saving treatments that we do today. And it started right here in Miami, right here in Dade County, and I'm proud to say right here in the Miami Fire Department. These two ambitious, forward-thinking pioneers implemented the techniques that led to the first, as you saw in the video, the first successful defibrillation of a patient in the field. They developed closed heart cardiac massage, which is now known as CPR, the EKG transmissions to the hospital, the first hospital portable EKG telemetry units in the United States, the first intubations in the United States, and many of the things that we do today that are now commonplace started with these two great men. And it's my pleasure as fire chief to give them a little token of our appreciation, our being collective, our appreciation. A plaque for each of them. And the plaque reads, the City of Miami Fire Rescue presents this award to Dr. Jim Hirschman, Dr. Nagel, a pioneer in modern EMS, in recognition of your contribution and revolutionary ideas in pioneering the first U.S. paramedics to use invasive techniques and portable defibrillators with telemetry. City of Miami Fire Rescue, 1967.
Dr. Nagel is a great leader, and I was glad to be his partner through many of these things together. One day he called me, he said, we need a law in the state of Florida to give our paramedics medical or legal permission to do what they do. They're doing things and there's no law to cover them. I said, well, okay. He says, I need it within a week, or was it within a day? And so I got out my typewriter and cranked out a law, and it was the first Florida Statute 401, which you may have heard about, FS 401. And he had some connections in the legislature, I had some connections in the legislature, and it passed the first time around. I thought, well, I hope I wrote it right. It's been modified some since, but not a whole lot. And I am proud to say that I insisted that the victims, we call them victims, be transported to the nearest appropriate hospital, not just the nearest hospital.
Thank you, Doctor.
I don't know about you guys, but it's been such a blessing to be here with these doctors. They were my childhood heroes. Their names were mentioned in our home all the time. And like I told them, most of the time it was in a good way. But what a blessing to see the first heartbeat of our profession here, your profession. And I'm just so thankful to them that they made the trip to be here for all of us. And of course, we owe such a debt of gratitude to Ricky and all the other paramedics that put this on every year under my father's name. We just could not be more thankful, and I hope you know that. So having said that, Ricky, we'd like to present you with something. But before we give that to you, you know, we have to mess with you a little bit. So a little bit of an Irish blessing goes along with it, okay? My dad, for those of you that didn't know him, was known for turning a phrase, a colorful turn of phrase, you might say. And I've noticed over the years that Ricky and some of the other guys have kind of imitated him a little bit. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. Ricky, we know you were his student, so please don't be ashamed. Just because you sound like him, you really can't be blamed. If imitation is a form of flattery, you certainly do him credit. I know your students, just like his, often can't believe you said it. Let's review a few of you and Randy's shared expressions. After all, they are the reason for those psychiatric sessions. Of course, these words are never meant to intimidate or harass. Who doesn't know you're loved when called a huckleberry dumbass? And all of us agree that you're really viewed as clutch. When told by your instructor, you're helpful as a rubber clutch. Encouraging words like these help folks to truly know you care. Why else would you be noting they're dumber than a bag of hair? And it certainly goes without saying the profound affection that you mean when they're sweetly told they're as useless as screen doors on submarines. But if we're really honest, what we came here to say is, Ricky, without you, there would never be this day. You honor Randy's memory just as you said you would. On every promise made to us, you've way more than made good. For 16 years, you and your team made this competition great. Your challenging scenarios draw the best teams in all the state. But as you know, the way to honor Randy and all those other pioneers is to be the kind of paramedics you've been for all these years. God alone can know the number of all the lives you saved and the paths for rescue's next cruise you have so competently paved. I've watched you for so long now, but what means the most and always has, because of you, we still have paramedics like the best one, Randy Boaz. This award is for you, but I want to include all of your team, your paramedics. You guys are amazing. And I get to live in Miramar where I have the greatest paramedics. They're awesome.
They're okay.
Yeah, okay. I know. I'll let you guys fight that out over that beer at the Marriott. But anyway, and like I said, my childhood heroes, and now you guys are today's heroes. So thank you so much for all you do.
Well, I can't beat that with a stick, that's for sure. Annie took after her daddy, and she has a way with words. But I have told Ricky this on several times, but I don't know if I've ever said it publicly, and I like to say it publicly, to honor Ricky. What happened, how did this get started, 16 years ago? Well, Ricky was Randy's first student, right? And then his assistant. And one day I'm working in Coral Gables, and this young man shows up. I had no idea.
Still young.
You're still young, that's right. And he wanted to talk to me about background information on Randy, pictures, anything that I had. And then he's planning this memorial, and he's planning this paramedic, paramedic scholarship fund and all of this. And I looked at him and I said, Ricky, why are you doing this? And he looked straight at me and he said,
Make me cry.
he said, Nidia, I will do anything to keep Randy's memory alive. And for 16 years, he has exceeded any of our expectations. And he has done just that. And I know a lot of you never met Randy, you've heard about him, you can see him in the City of Miami website and the history of the City of Miami, thanks to Dr. Nagel and Dr. Hirschman, what we have today as paramedics. But this competition, and like Annie said, a lot of volunteers, it's impossible for one person to do it, but he is the one that spearheaded and began, and I thank him, Annie thanks him, we thank him from the bottom of our hearts, that for 16 years, and I hope it continues, but even if it doesn't, what an honor he has had to be loved and appreciated, and for you all to be part of it. So thank you, Ricky.